Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to With Jewish Youth, the program that has reached a tremendous high in radio and has become a household program in every Jewish home. Yes, the feedback is tremendous. People continue to call in. People are writing in. People are speaking on the streets, wherever they get together, and they're speaking about this new type program With Jewish Youth. As I promised you yesterday, today we have a most distinguished guest, and tonight's program is dedicated to the life and accomplishments of the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Joseph Isaac Schneerson of blessed memory, who was in this country since 1940 when he arrived here on the SS Drottingham, the boat that brought him and his entourage. Since this coming Shabbos, the 10th day in the month of Shvat, will be the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe 24 years ago, we are going to have the pleasure of speaking to a gentleman who has been with the Rebbe over 30 years as one of his personal secretaries, and I believe one who has a tremendous amount of knowledge about the Rebbe and his personal life, and I'm sure that many of the things that we're going to hear tonight will be of tremendous interest to everyone. Before I introduce our guest tonight, I should like to call your attention to the fact that in Yirtzeh Hashem this coming Saturday night at 9:30 p.m., we will be on this network, WEVD AM and FM, when we will be bringing live from 770 Eastern Parkway, the headquarters of Lubavitch, the Farbrengen, the gathering where the Lubavitcher Rebbe personally comes out to speak and to address the public, and this will be carried in 28 countries and also over radio station WEVD for our radio listeners. With the help of God, I will be at the mic to do some translating of some of the discussions that the Rebbe will have, and I hope to God that you will be with us to enjoy it. We expect that the running time will be from 9:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. So try to be with us Saturday night and tell your friends about this coming Farbrengen, which will be with the Lubavitcher Rebbe live from Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn. And now, my dear friends, I have the great pleasure to bring to the microphone Dr. Nissen Mindel. Dr. Mindel is a very well-known personality in his own rights. He is a prolific writer. He is an author. He is a translator. He is an editor. Truthfully speaking, Rabbi Dr. Mindel is worthy of a program just to speak about himself and his many accomplishments. But since tonight, we are going to be talking about Lubavitch, and he has been associated with Chabad for over 30 years, and as I told you, as one of the secretaries to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, as well as the Lubavitcher Rebbe today, may he live and be well. I've asked Dr. Mindel to please honor us by taking a few minutes off of his most busy schedule to be with us tonight. I would like to welcome you in the name of all our listeners, Dr. Mindel, to our program With Jewish Youth, and I certainly am happy that you could be with us. In order not to waste any time, let's get right on to the questions. Dr. Mindel, I wonder if you could tell our radio audience, when did you, for the first time, meet the Rebbe, and how did you become associated with Lubavitch?
Well, first of all, Rabbi Hecht and your distinguished listening audience, I'd like to say that it is both a pleasure and indeed a privilege to be on this special program with you. Now, to come to your question, I first met the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1927. That was a very important and eventful year in the Rebbe's life. It was the year when he had just been released from imprisonment under the Stalin regime, and he came to Riga, then the capital of Latvia, as a refugee from the Stalin regime. I was then a boy of 15 in Yeshiva High School, and I went to a Farbrengen, my first Farbrengen. At that time, it was Yud Kislev Farbrengen. Soon afterwards, my older brother, a boy of 17, Osher, was about to emigrate to Argentine, and he went into the Rabbi for Yechidus to get his blessing. I accompanied my brother, and of course I was awestruck in the presence of this august man. We only spent a few minutes, and this was really my first personal contact with the Rebbe.
And I take it that after your first meeting, you were hooked. That was it, because from what I understand, this is where you started to become involved and very much part of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. But why don't you tell our audience what happened after this? After all, you did reach to such an important height to handle the Rebbe's personal mail, his correspondence, and many personal matters as his emissary. How did you come up to this point from a young boy of 15? There must have been a span of time through your education and so on. And how did you get back into this fold?
Well, of course, after that, I completed my education at the Yeshiva High School. I went to England, studied at the university. I obtained my rabbinical ordination, my bachelor's and master's in political science. Actually, I had other plans in mind, and I did not dream that I would be personally involved with Lubavitch. However, it seems that the Lubavitcher Rebbe had kept tabs on me, I would say, because about 1938, I had just completed my studies in England, and I returned to Latvia to visit my parents. I received a call from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to come to Otwock, Poland, then the headquarters of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the central Lubavitcher Yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim. I was invited, in other words, to join the Rebbe's staff. Now, as I said, I had other plans in mind, but I was intrigued by the invitation, and I decided it would be a good opportunity for me to get better acquainted with Lubavitch, with Chabad, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe especially. Mm-hmm. And I thought that at least on a temporary basis, I would accept this invitation. And so I went to Otwock in Poland, near Warsaw, to assume my new duties. In the meantime, my wife, I was married then, returned to her parents in England, and I began my association with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It lasted for almost a year, for the war broke out in 1939, 1st of September. It so happened that about 2 days before the war broke out, I felt uneasy about the situation, and I went into the Rebbe for Yechidus, and I said that in view of the fact that my wife was in England and I was here in Poland, and the war might break out any time, I thought perhaps it would be advisable for me to take leave of absence and be relieved of my unfinished commitment so that I could rejoin my wife. Characteristically of the Rebbe, he did not attempt to persuade me, although he needed me there, and he thought it was a good thing, and he gave me his blessing, and I returned to Riga, hoping to go from there to England. But it so happened the war broke out 2 days later. I got stuck in Riga. I did not hear anything about the Lubavitcher Rebbe for the next 3 or 4 months. And then one day I received a call that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was in Riga again. I was delighted to hear about it. And of course I was again invited to join the Rebbe's staff. And there I found out about the miraculous escape of the Lubavitcher Rebbe during the first months of the war, the siege of Warsaw, the bombardment of Warsaw. It was really miraculous that the Lubavitcher Rebbe received a special escort by the Nazis themselves from Warsaw to Berlin and from there to Riga. And so he and his family were safe and sound in Riga. That is where I again rejoined the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and we began at once to work on papers with Washington, so that since the Rebbe had decided to move his headquarters now to the United States.
Well, that brings us to the United States. There you, from what I understand, and as I've known you, you took on your responsibilities here once again to be by the side of the Rebbe. I think it would be interesting for our audience to know that before the demise of the Rebbe, you were with him for 12 years. All the years that he was, of course, in this country, the 10 years that he spent in this country, and prior to that, the years that you spoke about just a few moments ago. Dr. Mindel, I know that you were the one who translated 2 volumes of the Rebbe's memoirs. I also know that you were the person who was given the honor to write the biography of the Rebbe's life, which is, of course, have been printed in many, many volumes. And I would like to ask you something sort of that we can only know from someone who has a very, very close relationship from the inside, behind the doors. What would you say, which episode in the Rebbe's life impressed you the most? I mean, you've seen him under so many different situations, and you must have had an opportunity to really see many, many things come his way. What would you say, in your opinion, was the episode that made the deepest impression upon you?
Let me make a slight correction. I wrote a biography, but it was not a very comprehensive biography. One is now being prepared, a comprehensive biography. I did write a biography. I did translate 2 volumes of the Rebbe's memoirs. I was in the fortunate position of having been entrusted on one occasion to microfilm some of the Rebbe's archives. Now you see, during the last 2 world wars, much has been lost of the Rebbe's writings, and so many great treasures that have been lost. And now the Rebbe was determined to preserve what was salvaged. And one day he called me and asked me to have some of his archives microfilmed for preservation. And that is when I really got my first opportunity to get an inner glimpse into the Rebbe's personality, because I had before me his personal notes, memoirs, and recordings.
Was the diary, his personal daily diary, among those papers that were microfilmed?
Yes. The Rebbe was very meticulous in keeping a diary, and he recorded everything that happened to him in great detail.
And they were saved? Those diaries came along with him from Russia?
Well, some of them were saved. Most of them were saved. Some of them he rewrote from memory. But it was a veritable treasure, and I spent several days and nights uninterruptedly, as long as I had the archives in my possession, to go into it and really become acquainted. That is when I got the feel of what and who the Rebbe really was. Now, I came across his memoirs about his arrest in Russia under the Stalin regime. It is a long story. It partly is already been published now, but at the time it was too early to publish. Even now, not everything has been published for obvious reasons. Much cannot be published. But one episode struck me as particularly impressive, and that was the case where he describes one interrogation by the dreaded GPU, the secret police of the Stalin regime, where one of the interrogators pointed a pistol at his head, and he said to him, "You know, this little toy has silenced many a strong man. It will silence you too." And the Rebbe undauntedly and without a flicker on his face answered boldly, and he said, "You know, this little toy could intimidate one who has many gods but only one world. I have only one God, one master, but more than this world. I'm not afraid to lose this world. This was something which I thought was tremendously courageous, and he simply spoke just how he felt. He realized that his mission in life, he knew his mission in life was to preserve Yiddishkeit in Russia despite of the Stalin regime. And he did so in open defiance of the regime single-handedly, because he was the only religious leader in Russia left who defied the regime. And as a matter of fact, if many of us know of the Olim Chadashim that have come recently from Soviet Russia here and in Israel, and we see whole families, parents, children, grandchildren, all coming out from Soviet Russia, having been born and bred under that regime for over half a century. Yet they're strong, loyal, wholesome Jews in every respect. You just marvel, where did they get that strength? Where did they get that stamina? And you realize that it was all the doing of the Lubavitcher Rabbi and his followers during those first 10 years of the Soviet regime, and what his followers continued afterwards.
Dr. Mindel, those are really, really interesting and most beautiful words. Let me ask you something, since we're on a personal note. What would you say was your personal relationship with the Rebbe? I mean, you are closer than the average chassid or the average person who just visits once in a while. You were there, I'm sure, almost every single day of the week. Tell us something about your personal relationship with the Rebbe. I think we are all very excited about this and really would like to hear something about it.
Well, Rabbi Hecht, there is really much to tell, and I'm sure time will not permit us to tell much. However, perhaps as one characteristic vignette, one detail in this broad canvas of our personal relationship, it will be interesting and it will be descriptive of our relationship, and not only our personal relationship, but the Rebbe's relationship to all who were with him, and even those who were at a distance. It was on the day after we arrived in New York. We were staying at the Grayston Hotel at that time, Upper Broadway. I had a room in the hotel, which during the day served as an office. At night, it was my bedroom studio. My wife was still in England. We were separated by the war at that time. The Rebbe called me in, and I was prepared to hear some sort of a lecture, a very serious talk. We came to a new country and so forth. So I steeled myself and ready to hear a very serious talk. The first question the Rebbe asked me was, am I comfortable? Are you comfortable? I said, yes, I'm comfortable. I should, I was quite comfortable. And then he asked me, how about hot meal? Do you have a hot meal a day? I said, well, this is something I have not been able to tackle yet. I have yet to find out a kosher restaurant and so forth. So the Rebbe said to me, you must promise me that you will have at least one hot meal a day. A young man must have one hot meal a day. I promised I would look into the situation. And then I stood there waiting for the serious part of our talk. But the Rebbe smiled and sort of indicated that our interview was over. And I was tremendously amazed and impressed about the Rebbe's concern for my personal, physical well-being. But this is very characteristic of him, because he took a personal interest in every person he ever met. As a matter of fact, before I left him that time, he asked me, how is your brother in South America doing? Now, this left me absolutely flabbergasted. It was 13 years since my brother Asher went in to receive his bracha, 13 years, and he remembered him. I think this is really marvelous.
Really fantastic. Now, as the clock is ticking away very quickly, and it's just a pity. I do hope we'll be able to get you back for a few more programs. Not only one, I want to talk about the many books that you have written, the many commentaries that you have published. But tell me, Dr. Mindel, what in your opinion would you say was the most difficult hurdle that the Rebbe was confronted with and that he had to overcome when he came to the United States? After all, he certainly was from another world, unshowing and so on, and coming into a place like this modern, very up-to-date United States. What did he, in your opinion, would you say was one of the toughest things that he had to overcome?
Well, Rabbi Hecht, I think you really hit it now. You asked the toughest question and perhaps the most important question of our interview. The Rebbe came here, and this was, of course, the new world, a new world in many respects. One of the, I think, the most serious difficulties that he had to overcome here, or as you say, the most difficult hurdles, was the fact that he was thoroughly familiar with American Jewry. First, by correspondence, he had a previous brief visit in the United States. He knew what really ailed American Jewry, and he was determined to correct the situation, in fact, revolutionize the whole thinking of American Jewry, and especially the leadership of American Jewry. And one of his first slogans was, Amerika ist nicht anders. America is not different. We have one Torah which applies to America the same way as it applies to Eastern Europe. And this is something which he pounded and tried to impress upon the leadership as well as Jewry at large. People had the idea that here in America it's a different life, a different country. You had to adjust, you had to become Oisgriner, you had to compromise and so forth. But the Rebbe certainly wanted to put an end to this kind of thinking, and impressed upon American Jewry that America is nicht anders. That's number one. And here I found, I had from personal experience, I saw the tremendous power that the Rebbe had shown and displayed to overcome the pressures which he had to face here. Pressures by well-meaning friends who thought that if the Rebbe was to be a success in this country, he had to give up some of his obstinacy, some of his principles, and try to make little compromises, small ones perhaps, but in some way be more flexible. And I found that when it came to the Torah and to mitzvos, to principle, the Rebbe was inflexible in the least. He was like steel. Although basically he was a very soft man. He was a tremendously soft man, a very warm-hearted person, and so forth. But when it came to matters of principle, to Torah, he was unbending. He was inflexible. He would not compromise in the least. In those initial years, this was the most difficult thing to do, but it proved that he was right, because he knew that if he would start with the least compromise, one would lead to another, and he wanted to transplant Lubavitch on American soil the way Lubavitch was in Lubavitch.
Dr. Mindel, I think you're right. You really hit this nail right on the head, and I think in a few words you really told us what I think is true, and of course the final remark that you made, that it paid off and that we see that he was right in the first instance. We could see today with Kanahara, the generation that the Rebbe has developed throughout the world, and of course the scope of leadership that his son-in-law, the Lubavitcher Rebbe Zol Gesundsein, our Rebbe today, has taken on, and as a world leader and as one who is really directing Klal Yisrael. Dr. Mindel, just do me one more favor. I know we're running late on time, but just tell me, now that we're approaching Yud Shvat, the yortzeit of our holy Rebbe, what would you say does Yud Shvat mean to a chassid?
Well, I have been listening into your programs, what is a chassid and what is a Rebbe, and I was really impressed. I must say that my good friend and colleague, Rabbi Groner, has really acquitted himself with flying colors and these very difficult questions. So you know something about the relationship of Rebbe and chassid and what a Rebbe is to the chassid. And I would say, above all, the Rebbe to the chassid is someone whom he wants to emulate. He wants to be as close, like a little Rebbe as possible, if I might be able to say so. This is what a Rebbe is to the chassid. And when it comes to Yud Shvat, which is the day when we all recall the life and work of the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, it would be volumes and volumes to relate to what he has accomplished and how he has revolutionized the American scene, and in fact, not only the American scene, but the Jewish scene in many parts of the world. We think of the Lubavitcher Rebbe as a model to copy, to emulate, to follow to the best of our ability. And the present Lubavitcher Rebbe Zol Gesundheit has said that, look, see what one man can accomplish. Now, of course, none of us have those tremendous powers that the Lubavitcher Rebbe had. But at the same time, we don't have the difficulties and obstacles that he had to face. And so this day is a day of inspiration for every Lubavitcher chassid and every friend of Lubavitch to try and emulate and follow in the footsteps of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and show a little bit of Mesiras Nefesh, the real Mesiras Nefesh which he had shown throughout his life. This is what Yud Shvat means to us, a day of inspiration, a day of rededication to all that Lubavitch and Chabad stand for, and to try and do our share, big or small, to further the work and the institutions which the Lubavitcher Rebbe had established and to which he had dedicated all his life.
Thank you very much. And may I get a plug in here? The National Committee for Furtherance of Jewish Education is one of the Rebbe's children, one of the Rebbe's institutions that he has founded, which stand, of course, today under the present-day Lubavitcher Rebbe's aegis, guidance, and light. And so, my dear friends, another program with Jewish youth, and I'm sure you all loved it as much as I did. This was enlightening, it was inspiring, it was certainly invigorating, and I know that we are all eagerly awaiting the Farbrengen Saturday night, but with a refreshed approach to what this is all about. And so I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the Shabbos once again. I want to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy Shabbos and a very pleasant weekend. I want to thank Dr. Mindel for being our guest this evening. Dr. Mindel, I'm telling you now, we are not letting go of you. This was only a deposit. We hope, Emirat Hashem, to have you back for more. We want to hear more from you about your own personal life and, of course, of some of your great accomplishments. Those of you who wish may write to us. Those of you who can support, help this work to help us bring more of these programs. Don't forget, it's 824 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York, 778-4600. A closing word from you, Doctor?
Well, I want to say again, let us all participate fully in the spirit of Yud Shvat, and let's hope to observe many Yud Shvats henceforth.
Amen, and thank you very much. Until Monday at the same time, God bless you all.